Ken Watson wasn't your typical neighbor. At 87, he was a daredevil with a reputation for daring feats, including wing walking on an airplane at the age of 85. Yet, after his death, an astonishing discovery was made in his home, one that would forever touch the hearts of those around him. Hidden away was a mysterious bag filled with gifts for the little girl next door. But why were there so many? And what future plans had Ken made that no one ever knew about? Ken Watson made a lasting impression on everyone around him. A retired deep-sea diver, he continued his passion for thrilling stunts well into his later years. At 85, he took up skydiving and even performed daring acts while strapped to the wings of an airplane. His bold antics gave his neighbors plenty of stories to tell, but the most remarkable thing he ever did wasn't revealed until after he had passed. In his final years, Ken lived next to Owen and Caroline Wilson, along with their 2-year-old daughter, Cotty. From the moment their baby girl was born, Ken, whom Owen described as a real character, showered her with grandfatherly affection. Without grandchildren of his own, Ken formed a special bond with Cotty, doting on her as if she were his own. "We moved to the neighborhood 3 years ago and made a point of meeting all the neighbors," Owen recalled. "Ken wasn't home when we first stopped by, but the next day we heard some banging. I went outside to check, and there was Ken, in navy overalls, climbing across the front of his house on a 20-foot ladder. He was 83 at the time," Owen added, noting that this first encounter perfectly captured Ken's adventurous spirit. This was the same man who later wing-walked on an airplane at 85. The entire Wilson family grew fond of the old daredevil, even their dog. "On that first meeting, he gave our dog a chocolate biscuit. She adored him from that moment on," Owen reminisced. "She loved him so much. She would shriek with excitement whenever she saw him," he added. Ken would affectionately call her my darling and sweetheart. Sadly, Ken passed away at 87. As his family cleaned, organized, and collected items from his home, his daughter stumbled upon a bag filled with gifts. These gifts were intended for the little girl next door. Although it was well known that Ken absolutely adored Cotty, no one knew just how deep Ken's love for her ran. This became clear when Ken's daughter stopped by the Wilson home, clutching the large plastic sack she had discovered in her deceased father's house. After handing it to Owen and Caroline, the couple looked inside and realized what Ken had done without them ever knowing. The bag was filled with gifts, clearly intended for Cotty, Ivan she didn't even know about yet. After realizing that his time would come when he wouldn't be around, Ken planned ahead. He had bought, wrapped, and stashed away 14 different Christmas gifts for his little buddy, ensuring she would have a new one to open every year until she was 16. Stunned by the unexpected gesture and amazed by their elderly neighbor's kindness, the couple called Caroline's mother to share the news, tearing up over their neighbor's big heart. They also took to social media to share the story, as well as a small dilemma they had encountered. Although the gifts were intended to be opened one per year, none of them were labeled to indicate when they should be opened. "My wife and I think it might make a nice Christmas tradition to give our daughter a present from Ken for the next 14 years, Owen said. "The issue is we really have to open them now," he added, explaining that it was the only way to ensure she got the right gift at the right time in her life. A gift for a toddler would be much different than one for a teenager. But there was another challenge. Who could resist the temptation of a stack of gifts for over a decade? The family couldn't, so they decided to open some of them. One was a book, and Owen said he could tell there were more books than the other gifts, as well as 3 or 4 soft toys. The second present Cotty opened was a stuffed goat. As for the rest of the items, it was anyone's guess. It also wasn't known how long Ken had been hoarding away the presents, or whether he put together the sweet collection in his final days. Either way, it was remarkable for Owen and Caroline to see just how much their little girl was loved. But Cotty wasn't the only one to receive a gift from Ken. The rest of the world did as well. Ken Watson reminded us how to make this world a much happier place, at a time when far too many people don't even know their neighbor's name and wouldn't recognize them if they crossed paths in public. Ken showed everyone the beauty of being neighborly as he gave the greatest, most beautiful gift of all, the gift of love. As Cotty received his bounty, the rest of us had our faith in humanity restored. Ken Watson's story continued to inspire not just his neighbors but everyone who heard about his thoughtful gesture. The small act of buying and wrapping gifts for a little girl he adored was a testament to his loving spirit, one that seemed limitless, even in the final years of his life. His actions rippled through the Wilson family, creating memories that would last long after he was gone. The simple act of kindness extended far beyond material gifts. It was a reminder of the power of human connection. As Christmas approached, the Wilson family prepared for their first holiday without Ken, but they knew that, in a way, he would still be part of their celebration. That first Christmas without their neighbor brought mixed emotions. On one hand, they missed him dearly, but on the other, they couldn't wait to see what Ken had picked out for Cotty. When they handed her the first present from Ken, her eyes lit up, unaware of the significance behind the gift. For the Wilsons, it was as if Ken was there, watching from afar, sharing in their joy. Year after year, this became a cherished family tradition. On Christmas morning, after all the usual presents were unwrapped, they would save the special gift from Ken for last. As Cady grew older, she began to understand more about the man who had been such a significant part of her early life. Her parents shared stories of Ken's bravery, his daring stunts, and the quiet but profound way he showed love to those around him. Cady came to appreciate the thoughtfulness behind the gifts, knowing each one had been carefully chosen with her in mind. One year, as Cady reached the age of 10, she opened a beautifully bound journal. Along with it was a note from Ken, handwritten in his neat script. The note encouraged her to write about her dreams and adventures. Cady, who had begun to show an interest in storytelling, took this message to heart. It was as if Ken, even in his absence, knew exactly what she needed to hear at that moment in her life. The journal became a treasured possession, filled with thoughts and dreams that Ken had unknowingly inspired. As time passed, the gifts from Ken became more than just presents. They were a symbol of continuity, a link between the past and the present. Cady's friends marveled at the idea of receiving gifts from someone who had long since passed away, and it became a story she often shared, one that made her feel special and loved. The gifts were tangible reminders that love, once given, never truly fades away. It lingers in the most unexpected ways, showing up when needed most. Eventually, the time came when Cady opened the last present from Ken. By this point, she was 16 years old and on the brink of adulthood. The final gift, a necklace with a small pendant, brought tears to her eyes. It wasn't just the beauty of the jewelry that moved her, it was the thought of Ken, an old man who had gone out of his way to make sure she felt loved, even as he faced his own mortality. The gesture, so simple yet so profound, made her reflect on the importance of kindness and how small actions can have a lasting impact. Ken's story had an effect far beyond the Wilson family. As the tale spread, people around the world were moved by his thoughtfulness. Many were inspired to take action in their own lives, reaching out to neighbors, reconnecting with loved ones, or simply showing small acts of kindness. Ken's legacy became not just about the gifts he left behind, but about the love he shared with everyone who crossed his path. He reminded people of the beauty of human connection in a world that often feels disconnected. For Cady, Ken became a symbol of kindness. As she grew older, she often thought about him, wondering what other adventures he had experienced in his long life. She made it her mission to embody the spirit of kindness that he had shown her, becoming a loving and generous person in her own right. Ken's memory lived on through her actions as she sought to spread the same joy and love he had given her during her early years. In the end, Ken Watson's greatest legacy wasn't his thrilling stunts or the presents he left behind. It was the love and kindness he shared with those around him. His story reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can profoundly impact the lives of others. By sharing love, we leave behind something far more valuable than material things, a legacy that continues to inspire long after we are gone. As Cady looked back on the years of receiving Ken's thoughtful gifts, she realized that his true gift extended beyond the presents. Ken had taught her the importance of living a life filled with kindness, generosity, and connection. Inspired by his example, she began volunteering in her community, helping others in small but meaningful ways, just as Ken had done for her. Every year, as Christmas approached, Cady would share Ken's story, hoping to spread the same lesson he had taught her, that love and kindness, when given freely, can create ripples that last far beyond one lifetime.